In this video, we're building a web app where people can track their practices while learning to play a musical instrument. We'll use the no-code builder Frontly to build this app where people can log in, look at their dashboard with different visualizations and statistics about their previous practices. The app will have a practice log where people can go to look at all their past practice sessions. They can add new ones manually, or they can edit the details for a specific session that they had before. There's also a section where users will be able to add new instruments that they start learning, and also edit the details for other instruments. And on the practice page, users are able to start a new practice. Once a practice is started, it would show them a status that the practice is in progress, and it would also give them this form where they can pick the instrument and start adding different notes. As soon as they're done with the practice, they can click Finish Practice, and this will take them to a post-practice page to fill out a form with a rating for the practice, what percentage of the time they spent learning new material. They can adjust the instrument, add more notes, and then save this to their practice logs. This would then take them back to the dashboard where they can look at their historical performance. Throughout the video, we'll look at all the core concepts of Frontly, and we'll also take it a step further and look at different ways to prepare complex calculations and complex data within Google Sheets using array formulas. And don't worry, we won't be typing those formulas ourselves. We'll use ChatGPT to write them for us. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. This is the structure that we'll build for our music tracker app. So first, let's look at the website part. So we'll have our navigation, and we'll have 4 main pages. The dashboard is going to show us some analytics, like total time played per day, portion of the time that we're learning new stuff, distribution of our playtime based on day of the week, average time per practice session, and what instrument we're playing the most. Then we'll have our practice page where we'll be able to start and stop a practice and record that. We'll be able to pick an instrument for the practice and then add some practice notes. As soon as we finish a practice, when we stop practicing, the user will be redirected to a practice notes page where they'll have to pick a rating for their practice, what time of the total time as a percentage was learning new things versus practicing things that were already known, things like that. And this will take us back to the dashboard. Then we'll also have a practice logs where we'll be able to view and edit previous practices, and also be able to log practices manually. And our instruments page will be just a simple interface where we can add, edit, and remove different instruments. In terms of a database, we'll have 2 tabs in our Google Sheet: Sessions and Instruments. Instruments is pretty simple. We'll add the instrument, a description, and an image. I don't know if we even need the description, but let's go ahead and add it. And then we'll also have the user email. So for each user, we'll only be showing their own instruments. Similar for the sessions, we'll have the user email, the start and end date time, which will allow us to calculate the length, then the percentage of the practice that was learning new pieces, a rating for the practice, the instrument ID, so the selected instrument, and some notes. And those are the ones that we'll be adding through Frontly. The rest down here will be calculated with array formulas in Google Sheets. It sounds very complex, but it actually isn't, and I'm also going to show you how to figure those out with ChatGPT. Now that we have our structure, let's open Frontly and start building our pages. So I've created a new app here, and first let's look at our Google Sheets. You see here all the fields that we discussed and the ones that we'll be calculating with array formulas. I have highlighted so it's easier to distinguish what's data that's coming from Frontly and what's calculated here. Same for the instruments. We have no calculated fields here, so those are all things that we'll be adding through Frontly. I'm gonna copy the URL and import it in our Frontly app, import the 2 tabs. Then we need to add a relation between the instrument and the session, so we know which instrument we're using for each session. I'm gonna edit relational data, start with instrument, Frontly ID, custom ID will be instrument, and display name will be instrument. And then here we pick sessions, and from sessions, we're picking instrument ID. I'm gonna save the relations. And then we also need to do some settings here. So for instruments, there's nothing we need to adjust. The user email is a text field, instrument description, and the image is an image field. But for our sessions, if I click on it, you see that start and end date time are text. We need to change that to date. I'm gonna pick component, date, and I'm also gonna edit the date format, and I want it to be day, month, year, and I want my time format to be hours and minutes. The same thing for end date. I want it to be a date, and my date format will be days, month, year, and hours and minutes. I'm gonna show the rest, and I'm also gonna change the date just to day, month, year, and I'm not gonna add any time format here. Gonna save the changes here, and now we can go to pages, new page. I'm gonna start with the instruments page because it's much easier to set up. I create this page, just gonna add a table and connect it to instruments, complete setup. Gonna go to the page, advanced settings, and just switch it to 1200 pixels. I prefer it to be a bit narrower. Then for this table, we're not seeing anything right now because we don't have anything in our database, but let's go ahead and set up some of the settings. In terms of what we're showing, I don't want to show the user email. It will always be the email of the current user. And I also don't like this new record here. So I'm gonna go to more and change the item label to instrument. So now it's new instrument, and also back here, we're gonna edit the default view for record click action. Right now, it includes the user email, and I want this to be hidden. I'm gonna switch it to hidden, and the hidden value will be my user's email, so it always passes the current user's email. Then the description, I'm actually gonna move it to the bottom. I'm gonna edit it and make sure that it's a text area. Let's give it like 100 pixel minimum height, and I'm gonna show advanced settings and switch it to 3 columns so it covers the whole width here. Gonna allow editing, allow deleting, that's all fine. And the only thing left to do is let's go back here, select this table, and in filters, I'm gonna add a hidden filter. And my hidden filter will be that the user email must be equal to the current user's email, so they only see their own instruments. I'm gonna leave the search filter, although I don't think anyone would be adding that many instruments, but let's save page and let's preview it. So no results, but we can add a new instrument. And before we do that, gonna go to my Google Sheets and make that really narrow so that emails are not visible when we're looking at it. And the same here. Back here, we can start, let's say, adding a guitar. I'm gonna add an image. I click done, and I don't need the description, but right now it's required. So let's go back here and open the detail view again. And what I wanna do is for this description field, I wanna make sure that when we edit field validation, I don't want this to be required. Gonna save that, but because I already started adding it here, I'm just gonna say an acoustic guitar, and acoustic is with 1C. Save that, and now we have the guitar here. And if I come back here in our Google Sheets, we have guitar, description, and the image URL. So this works, and we can now start building our practice page. I'm gonna exit from here, create a new page, and call this one practice, create page. Here we're gonna start by adding a row, and actually before that, let's go back to page, advanced, and switch it to 1200 pixels. And this row, I'm gonna show the background, and this is gonna be on the top, and I'll have my start practice and finish practice buttons up here. So let's go ahead and add some buttons. One button, and actually gonna add another one. So this one will be start practice, and this one will be finish practice. I'm gonna also add some icons. So for the first one, I'm gonna add an icon for play, this one, and gonna go to styles and move it in the front. And for finish practice, I'm gonna select a stop icon, this one here. And I'm also gonna go to style and move it to the front. Then I'm gonna grab this first button and I'm gonna duplicate it. I'm gonna do the same for the second button, grab it, go to more and duplicate it. And then this start practice button, if I go to the row, this is the third button. I'm gonna move it next to the other one and I'm gonna change its style. Select it, I'm gonna change its style into secondary. And the idea here is that whenever a practice is in progress, we'll be showing this button and it won't do anything. So it's a grayed out version of this one. And the same, when we don't have a practice in progress, we won't be showing the actual button finish practice, but this one here, which will also change to secondary. In terms of starting a practice, what we want to do with this button is we want to create a new session here and save the start date time. We're gonna go to click action and select a step type. And the first step will be a Google Sheet step where we want to add a new session record. I'm gonna keep the action type as create. We can add in a success notification like practice started. The user email will be user email, and we need to add the start date time. And we need to use custom date time format. So in the help desk of Frontly, you can find this article using time variables. And if you come down here, you see that we can add custom like that. But let's just type it in on our own. So we need time.custom. And if you see here, you just type it in as if it's a string. So we'll say date, month, year, the time, and I'm using capital H here so that it's in a 24-hour format, and like that. I'm gonna copy that because we'll be using it when we are stopping the practice. And we won't touch anything else down here. And that's everything for this step. Then we're gonna add a new step where we're gonna set up a local state variable. So this is a variable that persists throughout the user session. So if the user refreshes the page, this will be an issue, but if they just click on buttons, it would work just fine. And the idea here is that we want to have a way of knowing if we are practicing right now or not, and local state is a pretty great way to do it without having to refresh the whole page and things like that. I'm gonna call it practicing, and I'm gonna set it to true. Close that, and then I also want to add another step, which will be navigate to page, and we're gonna pick the same page, practice, but we're gonna pass a URL parameter, and this URL parameter will be practice ID. So this is the ID of the current practice that we started, and we can get this ID from the first step where we create the practice record. I'm gonna pick previous step. I'm gonna pick the first step, and I'm gonna use Frontly ID. This is the ID that for the first record that we created here. Insert, close that, and our button start practice should be done. Let me save that. And now let's also set up this finish practice. Click action, select step type. We're gonna start with Google Sheets, again, sessions, but now we want to edit. The row ID that we want to edit is for the current practice, so we can now grab this from the URL parameters that we set alongside our URL. Pick URL parameters and say practice ID, insert that. The row column is Frontly ID, and our success notification will be practice finished. We don't need to change the user email, we only need to change the end date time. I'm gonna paste the same custom format that we use, and that's all for this step. Then we'll have another step, again, updating the local state, and the key will be the same key, practicing, that we set up before, but now we're gonna switch it to false, so we're not currently practicing. And we also have another step that's to navigate us to this, if you remember this here, to our practice notes. But we don't have this page yet, so we'll have to come back and add it later on. Close that, save, and now let's go ahead and just close that, hit preview again. Let's go ahead and test it. So right now, we don't have any practice running. If I click Start Practice, hit Practice Started, and you see that it added Practice ID equals 1, so our first record. And if we come here, we have the Frontly ID 1, and the start date time is set at the current date and time. We can let a few minutes go by, or we can just go ahead and hit Finish Practice. And now our practice is finished, and we're not redirected anywhere because we still don't have this other page. But if we come here, you see that now we have our end time. So we have the start date time and end date time. And we'll use those to calculate most of the things here. Let's go back to Frontly and add a few other things down here to make the experience a bit better. So I'll add another row. Gonna show its background, and in it, I'm gonna add 2 elements. The first one will be an image. I'm actually gonna make it 50 and the height 50 as well, the small image. And then I'm also gonna add some text, and this text will be practice in progress. I'm gonna make it a bit larger, and I'm gonna grab this row, center align everything, save that. And now for the image here, I have to exit here, go up here to my account, click on assets, and I have already uploaded this, but you can add new assets here, and it's just an image of a play button. And I'm gonna copy the link, go back to pages, practice, select this image, and just paste the URL here. So my idea is that while we're practicing, I want this to be shown. And to do that, we'll use a display condition. I'm gonna go to more when I'm selecting the row. I'm gonna add a display condition, and my display condition will be that I want the local state field of practicing. I want this local state to be true. Save that, and now this block here will only show when this local state is true. So when we start a practice, we'll see it, and when we finish, we won't. I also want the user to be able to start adding some notes to their practice while they're practicing. So I'll create a form down here. I'm gonna link it to sessions, and the form mode will be edit, and my row ID that we're editing will be from URL parameters, my practice ID. Remember that we're setting the practice ID as a URL parameter whenever we start a practice. Complete setup, and you see here that it just put all the fields. I'm gonna go here and start removing those. So I don't need this, no start and end. I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna remove the rating. I'm gonna leave those for after the practice. I want the instrument to be here, and even though it says it's input, we don't need to set it up because it's a related field. Remember, we set it as a data relation, so it automatically comes up as a drop down here. I'm gonna leave the notes. I don't need those, so pretty much just gonna leave the instrument and the notes. And gonna make the notes a text area. Gonna make it, let's say 150, maybe even 200. And also gonna show advanced settings and make it 3 columns. And you can leave it like that, side by side, or if you make that like 2 or 3 columns, this will come to the bottom. But I like it like that, so let's leave it like this. And we're not gonna change anything about the button, and we can save that. And now we can test those 2. But before that, actually, I want this to only be shown when we're practicing. I'm gonna go to more and do display condition. And my display condition will be local state practicing. Local state practicing. I want this to be true. Save the page, and back here I can refresh. And now you see that I still have this practice ID up here. I don't want that. Let me just go back to the main page. So if I start a practice now, those two show up because we're setting this local state of practicing to true. So it shows that. And here we can, let's say, pick a guitar, save changes. And again, you see, we have to have some notes. So some notes go here, save changes. And if I come here, we see that we have our second practice started. And we have the instrument ID and some notes go here. I don't want people to have notes when they're only picking an instrument. So let's go back here and make sure that our notes, just go here and grab the notes and edit field validation. I don't want this to be required. And I also don't want this to say instrument ID. Let me just grab it. I'm just going to give it a new label of instrument. Save the page, and this should all be good. Let's finish this practice. And we get the end date time here. Next, let's add this page that would allow us to give the practice a rating, add additional notes, and also select the percentage of the practice that was learning new pieces or new songs versus just practicing what we already know. Go back here, save, exit this page, create a new page. I'm gonna call this one practice notes, create the page. I'm gonna go to advanced, change the max width to 1200, and I'm actually gonna say hide navigation. I don't want the navigation to be shown when we're looking at this page so that people cannot go away from it. I want them to have to provide a rating and the percentage that was new versus old material. I'm gonna hide navigation, and here we'll just add a form. This form will be linked to our sessions. The form mode will be edit, and the row will be a URL parameter, practice ID, which will pass from the practice page. Insert that, complete setup, and here we don't want a lot of those things to be shown, so we want the new piece, which is the percentage of new material, the rating. We'll let them change the instrument and the notes. I'm gonna remove everything after that. I'm gonna rearrange those a bit. So I'm gonna say instrument, and again, just type in instrument for the label. Then for the new piece percentage, I'm actually gonna switch to a select, and I'm gonna add options manually. I'm gonna say 0%, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and 100%. And here I'm gonna say 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1. And for the label, I'm gonna say percentage of practice learning new material or whatever. So those two, I'm gonna leave them as required. So I'm not gonna touch the field validation. And for our rating, same thing. I'm gonna go with a select, and I'm gonna add 5 options. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the value will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just a 1 to 5 rating. And for the notes, I'm gonna show advanced settings, switch that to text area, make it 3 columns so that it goes on the next row, and I'm gonna give it a 200 pixels minimum height. I actually think this is a bit too wide, so I'm gonna go to page, advanced, and I'm actually gonna go down to like 800 is too little, so let's go with 1000. Okay, that looks much better. And I'm gonna change the title here to add practice notes, save page. So now when this is saved, nothing will actually happen. It will just leave us on the same page, and we need to redirect the user back to the dashboard. So we'll go to the More tab here, and I'm gonna disable the default submit action, and we're gonna build it on our own. So submit action, the first thing we wanna do is Google Sheets, session, we wanna edit. Our row ID will be our URL parameter practice ID, so the one that we have in the URL parameters up there. Okay, practice notes saved. And then I'm gonna remove a lot of those that I don't need. I'm gonna leave the new piece percentage. I'm gonna leave the rating and the instrument ID and the notes, and everything else I'm just gonna remove, because most of those are things that we'll be calculating within Google Sheets. So I'm just saving the fields that were visible. The percentage of the practice that was learning new material, the rating, the instrument, and the notes. And after we save that, the next step will be navigate to page, and here we'll be navigating to our dashboard. But since we don't have it, let's delete this step for now. I'm gonna close that, save this, and just so I don't forget, let's go ahead and create even an empty page for dashboard. Create a new page, dashboard, create it. Just gonna go to advanced and switch it to 1200 pixels, save it, exit, go back to practice notes, and here on the More tab, submit action, and now we can add our action to navigate to a page and pick our dashboard. Close that and save. We can now go back to practice, and for our finish practice button, the click action, we can add our navigation to the practice notes page. I'm going to practice notes, and remember we need to pass the practice ID, and we can pass it from the URL parameters. I'm going to say practice ID from here. Close that here, and save the page. Now let's go back here and just refresh. You're going to see all those pages here, and this practice notes is something that I want to hide. And just go back. So I'm going to exit from here, go to settings, navigation, and I'm going to find this practice notes and hide page from navigation. Save sorting, and we can go back in our music tracker here, refresh it, and now we don't have it up here. We're going to rearrange those later and add some icons, but let's go ahead and try our practice flow now. So we're hitting start practice. We see this, we have the form here, and our database is updated. I'm gonna pick the guitar, save changes, and we see here that now we have the instrument ID for guitar. We can add some notes, save again, and this shows up here. And now we hit finish practice. It told us that the practice is finished, and we now are sent to this page to add practice notes. We already have the instrument picked. I'm gonna say that 60% was learning new material. I'm gonna rate it at a 5 and add some additional notes, save changes, and it sent us to our dashboard. And you see here that we now have the new piece percentage, the rating, and the additional notes as well. And this is the basic flow within Frontly. We also need to create our dashboard and our practice logs view. So let's go ahead and create the practice logs view. Then we'll have to figure out all those calculated fields before we can create our dashboard. I'm going to create a new page, call it practice logs, create page. And here we'll add a table that shows all our sessions. I'm going to go to page here, advanced, and just pick 1200 pixels, save the page. I'm actually going to refresh this view because I don't see any sessions and we already have some created. So now we see those sessions here. Let's select that. I don't need the user email. I'm going to leave the start and end date time. I'll Also gonna leave the new piece, the rating, the instrument ID. I'm not gonna show this one. I'm not gonna show the notes, all those calculated fields. I'm not gonna show them. I'm gonna show the template actually, and I'm gonna hide the template new. This is the portion that's for new pieces. And actually we can hide the start and end date time and just show the date because we know how much we played. Then I'm going to show the rating string instead of the rating, and we'll be building this string in Google Sheets. I'm going to use some emojis to make it look a bit better. And then for instrument string, I'm not going to show it. We'll be using this for our dashboard. Going to remove the instrument email. This is those fields down here are coming from our relational database that we set up the relation between the two tables. So I can just leave the instrument here and I'll see it here. I'm actually going to remove the new piece percentage, and I'm just going to add template new. So that way we have the date, how much time we played, how much time we were learning new things, what was the rating, and what was the instrument. Let's fix the column names a bit. So date is fine. Actually, have enough room to add the day as well. Template is fine. This will be time learning new material. Our rating string will be just rating. And the instrument will be just instrument. Okay, that's great. Now let's go to more, and the item label will be practice session. So if you want to add new, it's going to be a new practice session. And now let's go back to basics and edit the detail view that will be shown whenever we click one of the records or when we are creating a new practice session. Edit detail view. So for my the first thing I want to do is the email. I want it to be hidden, and the value will be the user email. Then we'll leave the start and end time. The new piece, again, we'll have to make it a select. Gonna add a few more options here, and we'll start with 0%, 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and 100%. We're going to say 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1. And those three up to here are all required, so I'm not editing the field validation, but I'm going to change the names a bit, the label. So this will be practice start. I'm going to call this practice end. Let's say here percentage learning new material. The rating will be a select again. And I'm just going to add a few here. So this will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the instrument, I'm just gonna change the label to only instrument, and everything up to here is mandatory. I want people to fill it in when they're either editing or adding a practice session manually. Then you have the notes, and those below we can turn off. So clean start, clean end, those are all things that we'll be calculating. So we can just remove all those. And for the notes, I'm actually gonna show advanced settings, make it a text area, make it 3 columns, and set the minimum width to, let's say, 200. Also the detailed view width, I'm gonna increase it to 900. Okay, that looks a bit better, and I actually wanna rearrange things a bit. So I wanna have the instrument after the start and end of the practice, and then we'll have the percentage, the rating, and the notes down here. And for the notes, just gonna edit field validation and make sure that this is not required. I don't want users to have to provide notes, but everything else they have to provide so we can calculate all the additional fields. Save this page, and that's basically this page done. If we preview it, we have our data so far here, but nothing is calculated for those. But if we go to new practice session, you see here that we can pick the practice start and practice ends, and this calendar picker actually works because we set our date time settings for our database, so it's picking them up correctly. We then have the learning new material, the rating, and the instrument. And if I try to save it, you see that all those are required and this is not. And if I try to edit one of those, it shows us the practice start and end, and the instrument, and those two that we don't have because this is one of our earlier tests. We pick that here, we can change it to, let's say, 55, and this will make our practice a bit longer, but we now have to also select all those. So guitar, 20%, and let's give it a rating of 4. Save that, and if I come back here, you see that this first practice, where we still didn't have those things built out, is now up to 1955. We have the new piece, the rating, and the instrument ID, and within that, any notes. The next thing we need to do before building out our dashboard is figuring out those fields here. So whenever I want to write a formula, I would just go to ChatGPT and just say what I needed to do. So in this case, we need a formula that grabs the start date time and converts it into a clean date, which is a number in Google Sheets. So I'm going to grab this thing here and go to ChatGPT, and I'm going to say I have a Google Sheets table where column C contains the start date and time in format day, month, year, HHMM. Example, this in column, which is the column is I. In column I want the first row to say clean start, and below I want the formula to calculate. Column I, I'm going to say I want an array formula where the first column or the first row says clean start, and below I want the formula to calculate the date time from the string in column C or something like that. Write the formula. Let's see what it does. You might have to go back and forth with it a bit, but it's usually pretty good because there's a lot of information about Google Sheets and about array formulas on the internet, so it's easier for ChatGPT to do that. I'm using GPT-4 because it just gets it right on the first time a bit more often, but even with GPT 3.5, the free version, you can still get here. Okay, let's see if this looks good. Just gonna copy it, and here in clean start, just gonna paste. It actually had the equals in the beginning. I'm just gonna paste that, and let's just look through it. So we're saying if row II, which is this row, is equal to 1, it would return clean start, which is good. And then if is blank, this one, it's gonna return nothing, which is what we want. Otherwise, it's gonna create a date from those values, which are the first value is taking 4 characters from the 7th place in this date here, and it does the same to grab all the requirements of the date function, which are year, month, day. So it's taking the year, the month, the day, and then on top of that, it's adding a time calculation, which is taking the hour, minute, and the second is 0. And it's just using the mid formula to extract those pieces from here. I'm gonna hit enter, and it actually worked. So the way array formulas work is that you write the formula up here, and then it calculates for everything down below. That's why it's really important that we do not adjust those fields from Frontly, because if we adjust something here, we're breaking the whole array formula. We can then do the same for the clean end, and the purpose here is to convert this user-friendly string into an actual date and time value that Google Sheets can do calculations with. And our whole purpose for having a clean start and end is to be able to calculate the total time played. We can essentially use the same formula, just gonna copy that and paste it over here. And here I'll just say clean end, enter, and let's actually see if it's grabbing. Yeah, it's grabbing from the second one, so everything is just fine. Now we can essentially write our template array formula on our own. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna copy this whole thing up here. And for our template formula, let's paste it here. And we're gonna say if JJ, we don't want JJ, we want MM, because this is the column that we're typing in. So if this is 1, you're gonna say template. Then if then we want to see if those rows are blank, so we could just leave it with end date time, or we can just point it to clean end here. It doesn't really matter. And otherwise, instead of date, this date plus time, we're gonna grab this whole thing up to the closing bracket of the time formula, and I'm gonna delete it. So if it's not blank and it's not the first row, what I want is I want to get the difference between those two. And remember, this difference is in days. So we need to multiply it by 24 and by 60. But actually made a mistake. I don't need those here. We actually need the entire columns, JJ minus II. I'm gonna close the bracket and multiply that by 24 hours per day and multiply it by 60 minutes per hour. I'm actually gonna wrap this whole thing in a round formula because I want to make sure that it only calculates minutes and they're whole minutes without any seconds. I think I have closed all the brackets here, hit enter, and now it works. So from 1949 to 1950 is 1 minute, from 38 to 40 is 2 minutes, and from 32 to 55 is 23 minutes. We can now grab this exact formula and copy, paste it over here, edit it, just say template new. We now want this new piece, and it's actually right there. If this is not empty, we want to calculate and again round it. So we're gonna delete everything in the round here, and we're gonna say that we want this new piece, which is EE multiplied by the template MN. And this is going to give us the proportion that's learning new material. Here we have nothing, so it shows nothing. Here it's 20% out of 23 minutes, which is about 5 minutes. And here it's more than 50% of 1 minute, which is rounded to 1 minute. Now let's build our rating string. So we can go back to ChatGPT and just say in column, what was the column? In column F, I have a rating between 1 and 5. In column O, I want an array formula that shows rating string on the first row. and for subsequent rows shows the emoji, and I'm gonna add a full moon emoji as many times as the rating, and then fills the emojis up to 5 total with this emoji. And I'm gonna add a dark moon. Write the formula. And let's see if it manages to write this formula. Okay, we'll be using the rept from repeat, which looks promising, just a bit slow. Okay, it's done. You can just copy that and let's see if it works. So up here, you're gonna paste that, and what it says is if the current row is 1, type in rating string. If it's not, check if column F is blank, and if it's blank, show nothing. If it's not, repeat this emoji as many times as column F shows, and then concatenate it with repeating this emoji 5 times minus the F column here. It looks like this should work, and yeah, here we have a rating of 4, and it shows me 4 yellow moons and 1 dark moon, and here we have 5, and it shows me that. So essentially, if I add in 0.2 here, this should show us 0, yes, because it's less than half of 1 minute. And then if I add a rating of 2, we're getting 2 moons here. Okay, let's do the day here. I had ChatGPT write it out. I have the date and time stored as a string in column C in format day, month, year, HM, example given, and I want an array formula in column L that returns day on row 1, and on the subsequent rows calculates the day of the week from the date in column C. Write the formula. It gave me a formula, and you see here that did it another way. So it creates an array, passes the first value for the first row, and then from the second row starts with another array formula, and everywhere, instead of using the whole column C, it uses C2 to C. It should still work, just another way to do it. So let's go ahead here and paste that and see if it works. So it says that this is Thursday. And I think the issue here is that when it's converting this, it's grabbing the wrong thing for month and year. So let's take a look. Currently, it's recognizing this as the 4th of July. So what we can do is we can come here and grab our date, this whole thing here, and escape. And here in this formula, we can just say that we want to replace this date value. So we want to grab this date from here and use the text function to format it as a day. And I think this should work. Okay, the first one doesn't work. The other two work and are correct. And yeah, the reason why the first one doesn't work is because remember that this is formatted a bit differently. So everything should start from the second row. So we need C2 here and C2 here and C2 here. And now it should be all good. Perfect. Now for the date, we can just do it ourselves. So we can grab this thing here. I need this. Copy this, paste it here, change this to date, and then say that we want the text. Okay, and we can just change the formatting. It's gonna be day, month, year, and it works. So that's everything we needed to do here. The only thing left is the instrument string, and I was thinking about VLOOKUPing this based on the instrument ID from our instruments table, but it turns out you cannot use VLOOKUP within an array formula. And the only workaround that I could find is using some really complex like SQL queries from the instrument tab. And I don't think we'll need it because if you remember, we added a database relation between our sessions table and our instruments table. So we should be able to get the instrument name based on the ID that we already have in this table. So for now, we'll leave this blank. let's go back to Frontly. And before we start working on our dashboard page, there's something that we forgot to do. Let's go into the practice page. And if you remember, the idea here was that this will be shown in the beginning, then this will be shown when we're in a practice. So let's go ahead and set this. We'll use the same logic that we used for those two below. If you remember here, we had a display condition that our local state practicing is true. So I'm gonna copy that so that it's easier and we can just paste it everywhere. Gonna select the first button, go to more, add a display condition, and this condition will be that I want this button to be shown when we're not practicing. So this will be is false. Then the second one, more, add a display condition, and I want this to be true. So we are practicing, and that's why we're seeing the grayed out button. Same thing for finish practice, add condition. I want this to be true, so I want us to be practicing so that we see this button. And for finish practice, it would be here, this thing, I want it to be false. So when we're not practicing, we'll be seeing this finish practice button, the great one, because there's no practice to finish. Okay, let's save that and just gonna close those two. Let's hit preview. And I want to see how everything works. So we have our dashboard. It has nothing on it right now. Then if we go to practice, we can start a new practice. Okay, we can pick our saxophone, say sax practice, save changes. And at some point, just say finish practice. Okay, we go to our add practice node. So 60% was new material, rating is 4. Save changes, and we're taken back to the dashboard. And if we come here, you see that it's the next day for me. So it's 8th of April. Let's actually make sure that this is like the 8th or something like that. So we get something for a time plate. But everything seems to be working. It's Monday, and the date is 8th of April. Time plate 3 minutes. Time plate new 2 minutes. So everything is working just fine in terms of our database here. That means we can now start building our dashboard. Gonna go back here, exit, go to the dashboard, and we can start adding some chart, say sessions. I want a line, complete setup, and then let's see, we want this to be by the date. The value field that we want is actually our template, and we want to group it by the date. So we want those practices that are on the same date to be added together. And we have 1, and the reason for that, we should be having 3, but the reason for that is that this is on a count metric, and we want to do it as a sum. So now we should have 3 here, but it shows a 0. So let's save that and refresh our dashboard and see how it looks. Yeah, so here it shows up correctly 3 minutes, and here we have 26, which are those up here, 26. Okay, this will be our template. We can then duplicate this and call that time learning new material. And just make sure that this is template new. Something else that we can do is just gonna duplicate that again. And let's say we wanna show a pie chart. The label field will be my day. I'm gonna be grouping by day. And I'm gonna say template. And the grouping metric will be average. And my variant will be filled. And let me save and refresh. Didn't load for some reason. Okay, here it is. So this is the average time that we spent playing each day. And I see here that it's taking the average from each session, which is not exactly what we want. Let's see if we can fix that. Yeah, if we put it as a %, then it would be more appropriate because it's calculating the total as a % instead of the average of each of our sessions. It's not ideal because we're just looking at a weird number when we hover over it, but it's still better. Keep in mind, Frontly is constantly getting new features, so perhaps you'll get more styling options specifically about the numbers and how they're portrayed. Something else that we can add is we can add a stat, and this stat can be an average time per session. I'm gonna pick average, complete the setup, and my metric field will be time played. So this will give me the average time played per session. Just fix those here. So this is proportion of or session length distribution by day of week, something like that. And this here is average session time. And another one I want to add, just gonna duplicate this one here, is I want to do a bar chart, and I want it to be let's say vertical. The label, I want it to be the instrument, well, I want it to instrument string, but remember we have this link, so it's instrument, and I want to group them by instrument as well. And we can either leave that as percentage to show the distribution between different instruments, or for example, you might just want to look at the total time that you played in each instrument, up to you. But yeah, this is how we can add some visualizations to our app so that users can see how they're progressing and where they should focus more. Okay, save that. Let's refresh it. Okay, and we are seeing our data here. We can go and practice. We can work with our instruments here, add new ones, edit, and we can look at our practice logs, where we get some information here that now shows up because we meet the array formulas for those fields. And if we click, we can edit those and add notes, change the date. And the best part here is that because we set our date time format within our database connection and within our forms, and it all matches, we can now adjust the time easily here as well. Close that. And the only thing left to do is to go and add icons here. Not going to do that, but I'll show you where to do it. So if you go to the page settings, you can hit select an icon and just search for icons here. For example, we can search for chart or something like that, and pick this one, save page. And now if I refresh here, you see that the dashboard has this icon. And another thing we can do is if we go to settings, navigation, you can rearrange those. So you can, for example, move the instruments at the end because it's something that we'll not use as often. Refresh that, and now you see that we have our dashboard, practice logs, and the instruments at the end. And that's it. Can you tell me what we forgot to do right here at the end? If you can, drop it in the comments down below. So what we forgot when we were building our dashboard was to add hidden filters to all those visuals to ensure that we're only showing data relevant to the current user. So you can go ahead and add that on your own. Now that you can build entire apps with Frontly, it's time to explore how we can potentially monetize them. And we can do that by implementing Stripe's no-code features, and that's exactly what we're doing in this video right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in this video.